Yeah,
Hey,
yeah, yeah.
what's up, bro?
No, I'm good, man. I appreciate you jamming to the music, man.
Hey,
How's
man,
everything?
I've been jamming to that thing. We're gonna get into that, man. You
No,
caught one right there, man, for
man, thank
sure.
you, man. I
No doubt.
appreciate it. Yeah, your backdrop is pretty amazing, man. I need to step my backdrop up. You got all the greats back there, man.
Man, gotta be inspired, bro. You know how it is these days. Um,
Yeah.
man, we've been around each other so many times, and I never really sat down and like chopped it up. So, like, I'm excited. I get excited to chop it up with my peoples.
Indeed, indeed.
Because I love music, man, especially music history. But I like getting into music history with people that I know. You know what I'm
Much
saying?
respect. Yeah, yeah.
So, I'm going to go ahead and start it off. So, Rahway, New Jersey,
Rahway, New Jersey, yeah, man.
bro. I don't know.
A little town.
I don't know if you noticed, but if you Google Rahway, New Jersey, and you look up famous people or notable people from Rahway, you're in there.
Well, listen, I mean, Raleigh's so small that I don't know if that's like I don't know if that's the biggest the biggest the hardest competition, Q to 100. I mean, I think they recently did like I don't know if it's like a Raleigh Hall of Fame, but I was honored by Raleigh like a couple of years ago, man. Went back to the school and spoke and whole. I was like, man, let me find out. But that was home, man. It was a lot of love, man, and even the kids at the school really showed a lot of love. But there's a lot of people who actually came out of Rahway. I mean, one of the brothers from Cameo is from Rahway, and then I want to say somebody high up in Tesla.
Yeah, I want to say Tesla himself actually was there for a good minute. So I'm sure
yeah,
I
yeah.
wouldn't be
Now
surprised.
I'm gonna give you. Check this out, though. I'm gonna give you an exclusive. An exclusive, man. Shout out to my brother Chris Spicer. Um, do you know when Prince was getting his record deal for a short amount of time, he lived in Rahway? He lived
Really?
in an apartment complex called Rahway Plaza. My man Charles, I'm sorry, I said Chris. My brother Charles Spicer from Rahway. Um, they were friends. Like Prince was like 16 years old. Charles had pictures. They maintained a friendship all the way up to till he passed. Like Charles was a good friend of him. Charles had like Prince paraphernalia that Prince would give him and stuff like that. But he would always say like, "Yo, Prince lived in Rahway Plaza." Now, if anybody knows Rahway, the Plaza building was like infamous, and it's just crazy to think that this dude at some time lived in it. It wasn't like for like no week. It was like he lived there for a minute.
Really?
But no one ever talks about it. But the only way I know it's true is because his relationship with Charles was so close, and they bonded because of that time that he lived there.
Wow.
So it's crazy.
So in those early days, what was it in a small town like Rahway that made you say, you know what, I think music is what I'm finna do.
I mean, I think the church had a lot to do with it. My dad was singing in church, and we just had giant voices, in my church. So I didn't really have an idea of like where I was artistically and anything of that nature. My older sister was really, really talented. I was just trying to be like her, and just being a little brother, I had to like follow her around, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So she was the one who got put in piano lessons, and she was the
Okay.
one who was doing theater and all stuff like that. And I was just a little kid, like, following around. And then I just also remember like most people in New Jersey, where we were close enough to see the birth of hip hop, but wasn't really close enough to really experience it. Like I remember my boy Jonathan, his older brother would come home from these New York parties with like flyers or like maybe a tape, and we would just be like studying the flyer, like who is Red Alert? Like look at his drawing and like trying to understand what was going on there. And,
Yeah.
and like right after that, I remember we started hearing the music, and then you start feeling like, God, I'm in church playing this. But then what I hear over here is that's crazy. And then of course, Jersey, the great part about it is like Saturday nights when you went out, it was house music. Sunday was church. The weekdays when you got home like video music box, that was hip hop. So you were getting all, and then my dad was coming home with records with like rock and roll and soul music. So you had all these different things. Like how am I going to incorporate all this into my music? So that was a kind of good thing that we were close enough to everything, but far enough that you allow your creativity to kind of put it together.
So when it comes down to hip hop's early influence and where you were in your development, just as a person and as well as a future artist, do you think hip hop influenced you a little more than R&B, or would you know what I'm saying? Where would you kind of put that?
I mean, I would say that it was equal. It was just as important. Slick Rick played just as important part, and Busta Rhymes and LL Cool J was just as important as Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder is my all-time favorite, right? And Commission was enormously. So I mean,
Oh yeah.
all of it played a large part. But it was like there was no way I could move forward in gospel. There was no way I could move forward in R&B soul music without including hip hop. By the time I was a senior, and a good thing was like also like my homies who did music in New Jersey, it wasn't a lot of us. It wasn't like cats was playing guitar or really a keys. It was cats doing hip hop beats. So my option really was like to sing over hip hop. We would sing over hip hop beats before we would sing over anything that was really musical. You know what I'm saying? Because you
Yeah.
know that the elders in church might give you a track. You like, I'm not singing to that at all. You know, you know what I'm saying? But my boy might do a beat that was similar to EPMD, and I'm like, all right, well, I like EPMD, so I'll sing over that.
Gotcha.
And then I remember my like freshman sophomore year at Howard, where the A&Rs were kind of coming around, or like people were able to really hear your music, and they were like, the world's not ready for that yet. The world's not ready for people singing over hip hop beats. And I was like, but I grew up under also I'm trying to think of who the cats, them DJ tapes back in the day in New York where they were taking EPMD and playing Guy over it,
Oh wow.
or Take Six, and you know, doo-wop tapes and all those guys. It's like that was really the introduction. Really, if you think of Bad Boy, Come and Talk to Me remix was really just building off of the doo-wop tapes, and also because guys was like taking like Adore by Prince and then putting Biz Markie's "Oh Baby You," know, and it was like off
Wow.
key and the whole nine, but it didn't matter because it was like, no, that's Ron G. Thank you for the people in the comments. You know, all those tapes were like lessons, So all of it was just as house music was just as important too, because house music pulled me away from songwriting rules that would have pigeonholed me if I just stuck with, you know, studying, you know, the greats, Aretha Franklins and the Sade's and Stevie's and, you know, Al Greens or whatever.
Yeah.
I think you needed somebody to go like, what the heck was that? You know, where are you coming from with that? And that would change like how you approach music.
Wow. For everybody just tuning in, I am Kandid with my boy Eric Roberson, my Libra brother. I didn't even know we born a day apart, fam. I'm 25th of September.
Oh, one day before me. That's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope.
So
That's
I was
dope.
like, oh, this is gonna be cool. I already know what's up.
Happy soon to be Libra birthday. Yeah.
My brother, same to you. Take me to Howard, bro. Like Howard, I mean, I was Eric cutting up at Howard? Like, what was Eric like on the yard? Was it Arrow? Was it just Eric? What was the and then I thought your major, your field of study was very interesting. You know what I mean?
So you know, I got a scholarship. I won a national pageant, and I used to always think it was going into my junior year, but it was actually going into my senior year. I won a national pageant called Mr. Black Teenage World, and it gave me a full scholarship to Howard University. It gave me a full scholarship to Grambling and to Howard, and Grambling wasn't even an option, right? But so I really had an idea of what I was going to school. I'm going to my senior year. I know where I'm going. You know, now at this point, football is not an option, this and that, whatever. But music was really jumping, you know, taking priority. And I was also really in the theater. I was doing a lot of theater at the time. So you couldn't major in R&B singing at Howard, right?
Right.
You couldn't major in like hip hop music production. So I didn't want to go in for like jazz studies. I looked at it and I was like, though I appreciate the teacher there and the curriculum there. What spoke to me was when I went to go see a play, they were doing Dreamgirls, and I mean I was intimidated. I was blown away by the talent there. So I was like, okay. So but I was probably more. I mean, if I didn't know people, I was a pretty quiet guy at first. The blessing of it was I had some equipment my senior year. I had a Sonic. It wasn't a TS10, ESQ, I think it was. It was a programmer. Like it wasn't
Oh, shoot.
like a sequencer. And I had that and a couple other little things. And so when I showed up to the freshman dorm carrying a keyboard, it immediately was like, sure, a lot of people let me walk by, but anybody who was interested in music, anybody who played music was like, yo, you do music? What floor you on? I'm on the 5th floor. Yo, I'll be there. And from that moment on, a lot of the guys that I still work with to this day were those guys that I met walking in with that keyboard, you know, the very first time. And really my whole freshman year, you know, I got no play whatsoever because my dorm room was filled with people making music. The whole, whether I was making music or I might have been asleep, every morning I would wake up to the sound of people tapping like this. And when I look up and somebody be wearing headphones playing the keyboard.
Wow.
It was like, it was nonstop. When I wasn't there, when I was in class, somebody's in that room, like just a constant circulation. But it kind of put us into a creative spirit. By later on, I might have had my fun that we won't talk about Howard. But my first really beginning part was really just all music. And then they took me to a studio, Night Flight Studios, that I still go to this day in Fort Washington, Maryland. I got a lot of my records mixed there still. And we would go there. There's a brother named Scotty Beats, God bless the dead, man, good friend of mine, who would bring us to Night Flight. He was one of the engineers there. And we would be doing, you know, the night shift, the graveyard shift. We get in there at 2 o'clock in the morning and be cutting till 7 a.m. until we had class the next day or whatever, you know. But that was phenomenal, man. I mean, and it was just the talent that was there. I'm sure every school got, you know, phenomenal talent, but I mean, the what ifs, man. There was so many people that I think that if they were given the opportunity, they could have changed the face of music, keeping it really 100. And then when you think about it, there's a lot of it, like Chris Dave was a classmate. I remember when Mint Condition came on tour and heard him play, and he left with them and never came back. It never came back. I mean, I remember the day like it was yesterday. Ray Angry, who plays for D'Angelo and the Roots and everybody else, another classmate.
Wow.
We could run them. We could, and that's just the music department. You know, let alone, you know, the theater. If I get in the theater department, we'd be here for days. But it was just, you know, and I tell you, man, I don't give him enough credit, but Marlon Wayans was a friend and a classmate at Howard, and it was important to see that he did the movie Mo Money and came back to Howard. Like he shot the movie with his brother, and then he came back and he's sitting in class with one of the biggest movies out of the year, and it just psychologically it prepared me for the future, because once I went and left and I got signed my sophomore year to a record deal. I left school, and then once it kind of worked out but didn't really work out, it wasn't hard to go back to school.
Gotcha.
It wasn't hard. And I think that was the first step of saying, if he could sit in this classroom, I could sit in this classroom, you know, as well as a lot of my teachers. The beauty of, if I went to school for political science, first and foremost, I don't think I'd have been around the energy I needed to be around to get signed or be doing music. But at the same time, my professors were working, so they couldn't complain. You know, Al Friedman, who at one point was the dean of the department, he played Elijah Muhammad in Malcolm X while we was in class. Now, you know, we in class, and here's our teacher, you know, playing Elijah Muhammad. So when I tell him, yo, I gotta go to LA, I got some meetings, he ain't really gonna say much. What can he say? You know what I mean? So there was a period where I was flying out a lot. I was leaving, you know, almost every weekend. That was before the deal really was working out. I was like, and then the deal worked out, and I was still flying back and forth. And the teachers were really understanding. They were kind of like, all right, we kind of see what you're doing, get it worked out, keep getting your work done, and just keep rocking out. And it worked out. Yeah.
I had a conversation with B. Cox last Thursday.
Yes.
And
my brother, man.
Yeah, we were talking about his early development, and he talked about the noontime days for him, and he really spoke highly about how y'all locking in and y'all's collaboration really helped steer him and nurture him in his earlier part of his professional production career. So I didn't even know that part of your history. So I was very like intrigued by that, like, wow, you know. So how did you even become around that type of, you know, collective of creatives?
Well, let's say, you know, the first thing was after I graduated, I did theater for a minute, and then I came to Atlanta to work with a guy named J-Dub, who was part of Noontime at the time. And then we hit it off really well, and we were like, yo, let's do a group. And they had a deal with Epic. We was like, yo, we could do a group. So we had a group called EXO. And I
Okay.
came down there to do that, and unfortunately that fell through. Yo, first of all, I got a million record deal fall throughs, and we could talk a whole hour just on that, but that's another story. But we were going to do a group, and it was actually, I mean, real talk. It was, to this day when I hear it, it's some dope music. Like, it's really, really amazing stuff. But then J-Dub ended up parting ways with Noontime, and here's another group of, there were a lot of producers there, Jazzy Faye, Dent, a lot of cats there. But then came the new wave. And for me, you know, even in speaking of B. Cox, the first thing I saw is talent and saw a spirit, you know. And for me, it's all about, I always preach like the importance of networking. It's like a very important thing in the business, but it shouldn't be a thing of like trying to egg your way in and whatever. It should just be, well, when your spirit feels right about something, feed it, like
Yeah.
feed into that. And I remember he was in college, and here I am, a person who graduated from college, but also had my struggles with the business and stuff like that. I see that he's in college in Atlanta. He's like interning engineering in Noontime, and so I'm like kind of just checking him out and just checking the interest. Like, I see your talent, I see what you're trying to do. What's up? But I remember one of the early parts was, you know, I could cut myself. I know how to work the equipment, so you don't necessarily have to engineer. So how about this? Because what it would be was he could engineer the session, and then once we were done, then he could work on music.
Mm.
But what happened is Cash might work till like 6 o'clock in the morning, and then he's left with at 6 o'clock in the morning after cutting our stuff, now trying to work before he got class. So I said, yo, why don't you go to sleep? Like, go to sleep. I could work. I could do this. And then when I'm done, I'll wake you up. Then you could work on music well rested. Only deal is you got to go to class.
Nice.
Like, that was the beginning. And then I started hearing what he was doing. I was like, yo, let me write to that. And that was the start, man.
Wow.
I mean, he was on his way. I didn't have to do much, because you could see already his playing ability, his understanding, and he was learning so fast. And he didn't have any weaknesses, like, real talk. He was ill on the drum machines. If he had to do up tempo, he could do up tempo. If he had to do a ballad, he had that on lock, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, it was just, you knew he was on his way, but he was real young, you know, just a special dude, man. And it was very, very obvious. And then, so I tell you, man, one of the beautiful things with B. Cox and with so many people is that I've had the fortunate opportunity of watching a lot of people's dreams come true. You know, watching people where I remember taking them to Church's Chicken. I remember the last time I had Church's Chicken, I brought B. Cox to church, and we talking 20 something years ago, right? That nasty that nasty chicken. And we was headed to the studio, and we stopped, and we talking about our dreams. We were talking
Wow.
about our dreams, and like, you know, for him to work with everybody and their mama, and for him to now be a dope DJ as well, and have his podcast and his stuff, I couldn't be any prouder, man. I couldn't be any prouder. And that's the beautiful thing, man. And not only your dreams come true, but watch others. It's there's no joy in just yours popping off. It's a true reward when you can look at your friends really, really working.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay, so Touch of Jazz, bro. So
Woo!
yeah, I gotta go
Let's
there
go. Let's
because
go.
it's one of the most heralded collectives of producers and songwriters and creatives, and it really helped shape the sound of the new soul emergence that was occurring during that time period. I remember the first Music Soul Child record, like I spanned the whole album when I first got it, right?
Yeah.
Mary, how could you go? What?
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, yo, that's my man. That's my dude right there. So
So,
can you? Yes, please.
A Touch of Jazz. First of all, there need to be movies, documentaries really made about A Touch of Jazz. And shout out to DJ Jazzy Jeff. He doesn't get enough credit, or doesn't. We don't speak about it enough. A Touch of Jazz was like my grad school. It really was, and it was probably what I needed at the time to really understand what I wanted to do, and also go to another level of artistry. At that point, I had placements. I had a few record deals. And to circle back for a little bit, I remember I was singing background for Kenny Lattimore when I was still in college. He got signed. He went on tour. I went on tour with him, and his manager was DJ Jazzy Jeff's manager, and he played me this music of just an artist they had is a dude named V, still an artist right now. One of my favorite artists to this day. And I was like, yo, what is this? Who is this? And it was crazy because the music that we were trying to do, it was just a more polished understanding of that, right? And I remember I stole that CD. There was no way he was getting that CD back from me, right? But I'm like, yo, link me up with them. Link me up. And he's like, nah, you good. Nah, he wouldn't link me up. So then I go back to college. I finished college. I then moved to Atlanta. I'm working at Noontime, which was a great business situation for me, but wasn't the music that I necessarily created. I was creating, once again, soul music, and that was probably more of an area like R&B,
yeah.
Right? So I remember I was in ASCAP meeting in New York with a brother named Bill Brown, enormously helpful dude. And he says, yo, there's a guy passed through. He said, yo, do you know Keith Pelzer from A Touch of Jazz? I didn't have to turn around. I knew whoever this guy was I'm about to turn around and see, I'm leaving with him. Like I'm going, like, so I turn around and say, oh, yo, I don't know him. He said, what's up, man? I said, well, I'm Eric Roberson, this and that. He said, oh, dope, please meet you. Oh, yeah, if anytime you're trying to come work. I said, no, like, I'm coming now. So I lived in Atlanta, but I was in New York. He said, well, I'm about to head back to Philly. I said, I'll go with you. I caught the train up there. So we drove back to Philadelphia, and keep it 100, I never left. I pulled up with Keith, and we went in the studio that day. I probably worked, keeping it really funky with you. I walked in there, no suitcase, no nothing, and probably stayed 2-3 days working with Keith and Darren. At that time, they were partners. Then I went to my parents' house about an hour, 2 hours north, changed clothes, went back, started working with Dre and Vidal. 6 months later, I fly down and pack up all my stuff out of Atlanta, and then I drive back up, and that was it. And that was it. And it was like, from there, I probably was there for like 2 years. I remember when Music walked in for the first time. I remember when Jill walked in for the first time. I remember when Floetry walked in, Raheem Devine walked in for the first time. And the beautiful thing about it, man, just keeping it really 100, was like, Jeff, you have 4 studio rooms fully equipped to everything you could possibly imagine. Like everything you could possibly imagine. And Jeff wasn't really tripping on like, are y'all writing and landing songs and this and that and that. It was just more like, are you developing yourself? Are you being dope? So there were days where like we just hung the microphone in the middle of the room and got in the corner and sang, let's hang it up in the lobby and see how it sound there. I mean, just days of just trying out weird stuff. And then as soon as you were done, zoning out, cooked out with one person in one room, just because it was a family and it's all love, I might go to Studio B just to say peace out. And they got something crazy going on in there. And before you know, like, we in the basement, you know what I mean? So it's like 10 hours later, you finally finishing up 2-3 songs in there. You're like, all right, I'm about to leave, and then you go to Studio C to say bye to them. They playing something crazy. You like, before you know it, it's Friday. I came on Sunday. Like, and that was every week. That was every single week. So, when I talk about people's dreams coming true, like watching Jill make her album, watching Music make his album, that was an honor, man. To be a part of that, to watch their growth, to watch Jill, who always could sing, but she was more of if I break down a pie, she was like 60% spoken word artist, 40% singer when she showed up. By the time the album was finished, she was 75% singer, 25% spoken word artist. But she was such a dope spoken word artist that her pen was just a monster, from a singing standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just a great honor. And then to see the producers, Carvin, Ivan, Dre and Vidal, all of them just really, really develop. And then Jeff wasn't no slouch in his own right. Like he was killer on the beats, but then watching him DJ in his DJ room was like watching Michael Jordan play in his own basketball court. 2 of the greatest moments that I've ever experienced musically was one time when we were talking hip hop just like me, him, and a couple other people. And he turned the turntables on, and we talking about like 50,000 records behind him, no headphones. He probably played for 4 hours, like 20 seconds of almost every single record. And he like grabbed off the shelf. He know where to put the needle down, needle spread, never put headphones on. How about this one? And then we did this. And then the transition came when this artist did this. And he gave us a history of hip hop through all his records. Like, and then probably a year later, he did the same thing with R&B music. And I was just like, imagine sitting there for 4 hours, like, you know. So I mean, it was crazy. So the first time I ever heard Jay Dilla was in that room. The first time I ever heard Lewis Taylor was in that room. You know,
Wow.
there was so many magical moments. But I really became an artist. My songwriting went to another level. My understanding of production, and also I was always a person who had equipment, but understanding that equipment was power came from down in that basement. You know, I realized it was like, okay, whether I'm working here or I'm working home, I gotta have drum machine, keyboard, mic. I gotta have, you know, a plethora of stuff, because there was never a time of looking at a clock. When we worked at A Touch of Jazz, I mean, when we worked at Night Flight, we had to like, all right, it's 3 o'clock. I got an hour left, and I got 30 minutes. At A Touch of Jazz, we were just working.
Wow.
I didn't know what day it was. You know, back then we didn't have cell phones and like that. I didn't know what day it was. I didn't know, you know what I'm saying? It was like, it was not any problem that we might come down there and stay for 2 weeks. And mind you, I might shoot over to Jeff's, take a shower real quick, come right back. But also we might just work straight, doze off on the couch for a minute, wake up. What the heck is that? And we back in the mics, and you know, so it was a great time, man.
Man, I wanted to talk about the indie soul movement.
Yeah.
Your career and how you've handled it, your business model in a lot of ways has been very influential on a lot of other artists that have come behind you. You know, I've heard it mentioned as you could do it the Eric Roberson way, or you could take the Eric Roberson model. I'm like, this man got a daggone model out there.
I got a model. I should have wrote a book or copywritten it or something.
So I'm like, good. Yo, and you were really on the forefront of establishing that type of business model for yourself. Was there an aha moment that happened that caused you to rethink things in a certain type of way? Like, where did it come from, if you had to look back at it?
Well, you know, the start was, I think my early record deal failures really got me into saying, all right, I'm not going to be an artist. I ran that route before. Let me get into the songwriting world. And I really worked hard with going into New York, going to LA, going to wherever the record label at, and going, hi, I'm Eric Roberson, the songwriter. And I could write a song. Give me 30 minutes to tell me what you need. I'll have it for you. I could write a song, boom, 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 whatever. And I really sold that for like, even at Touch of Jazz, I sold that. I don't know if I was really ever cutting as an artist. I was cutting as a songwriter. And then, of course, the artist bug comes in because you're dealing with your artistry and stuff. But then the Philadelphia wave came, and everyone in Philadelphia got a record deal. Everyone, right? Except for me, because when the A&Rs came in, one, they knew who I was, right? But when they're like, all right, I'm going to sign Jill, I'm going to sign Music, I'm going to sign Bilal, I'm going to sign... that's Eric Roberson, songwriter. He don't want no record deal. It was like, it was just known. Like, it was like, that's Eric Roberson, songwriter. Like, yeah, but I'll take a record. You know what I mean? It was like, whatever. So it kind of like passed over me, but it was kind of a blessing because I wasn't ready probably at the time and didn't really have things figured out the way I wanted to have it figured out. So for me, it was like I got into a bad breakup and turned to music. That was like my way of healing. And when the record was done, the music was done, I was like, I'm just going to put it out. I didn't have a deal at the time. And I also was able to see a lot of artists fertile ground. There were artists who were releasing independent records. It was by no means was I the first. And even keeping 100, I want to say Dwele was either right behind me or right in front of me with Rise. He released an independent album called Rise, which was incredible.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people really on the scene from an independent standpoint. So I was like, wow, I'll put it out. And I always remember this, though. I remember my peers who all at this point now have record deals and all working in a different capacity. When I told them I was putting this album out, most of them like laughed. Most of them was like, "Why are you doing that? Like, what so do you have a record deal? No, I'm just gonna put it out. Well, how are you gonna do that? What don't make no sense. Not like I really knew what I was gonna do anyway. I just was gonna do it, and it just started working. The aha moment for me was really, I remember Kim as an independent artist, and once he sold a certain amount of records, the majors came in. And he went to Motown, Dwelle. Once he sold a certain amount of records, he went to Jive, and that was the route with everybody. Let us see, most people kind of went that route. For me, I already had the record deals, and I've worked enough in the music business as a songwriter to see deals fall through and all stuff like that. So for me at that point, I was like, well, what happens if I just stay on this course, right? Like, what happens if we don't sign with anybody and we just keep trying to grow it this way? If I made anything different than anybody else, it was probably that. It was like there was a period where I remember when I was working on my second record, I was talking with Pharrell for a minute. Pharrell was interested in signing me. I don't talk much about this, but we met up a few times, and he was really interested in signing me and working with me. And for some reason that fell through. But I remember at the time, my managers at the time were like, "Why don't you hold this record in case the Pharrell deal happens?" And I was like, "Nah, I'm gonna put it out, and then if Pharrell signs me, then I'll do another album with him." But I was like, I'm not at a point now in my life where I'm willing to wait on another promise, another whatever. Like, I'm at this point about getting it. And the difference really was, as a songwriter, you have a huge year, you have a real quiet year. You have a huge month and a real quiet. You have no control because I was at the mercy of another artist, another platform, another label, whether the album was coming out. So when I started putting my records out, when I went into a barbershop, I was like, all right, there's 3 guys in this barbershop. That's 3 sales I got. Because when I time I leave out of here, y'all buying these 3. When I walk into a restaurant, a takeout spot, and there's 4 people waiting for their Chinese takeout, I'm like, that's 4 people. So it just changed my mind. So I wasn't making more money. I just was having more control of what I was making. So then once you have control of what you're making, you can plan. You can put a business plan together. If you don't know what you're making as a songwriter, you're like, I don't know if these songs are coming out or anything. It's hard to really plan on the future. There were times where I had way more money in the bank account than I got right now and was still broke, still like mentally and broke, because I was like, I can't spend this because I don't know when the next dime is coming. Whereas once it started working, even if I had $5,000, guess what? I got a $5,000 business plan now.
Mm-hmm.
And then you grow and grow from there. So once I realized that, like, having my own platform didn't make me immune from failure, but it made me in more control of how things could go.
Facts.
I could win on my own hustle,
Yeah. Yikes. Okay, so let's talk about songwriting.
Yeah.
On its own. I mentioned music before. You got Case, Charlie Wilson. I mean, Will Downing, Vivian Green. I didn't know that was you, co-writer on it.
Yeah.
So you've been giving it to us as an artist and as a songwriter consistently the whole time. I was just curious, from a creative standpoint, what part of the process do you like the most? Is it the songwriting process? Is it the delivery of the song as you're writing it? What is it?
I think it's the chase of. Now the term is a little bit out, but my rule has always been, the only rule I have is chasing goosebumps. I'm addicted to it. So I'm addicted to when you play a certain chord and I go, oh, I live for that. You know what I'm saying? I live for my homeboy send me a beat and I'm like, I got to pull the car over. I'm like, golly, you know what I mean? Or, you working on a line and you trying to figure it out and it finally comes together. You're like, oof, the hairs in your arm stand up, or that feeling that you get is everything to me, and it's what I chase in the studio. I'm writing till I get that. The world is not necessarily hearing it until I feel that, and it ain't gonna guarantee that everybody's gonna feel it. But if I know that I feel it first, there's a better chance that somebody else is going to feel it, you know? So, you know, completion is important, delivery, work with other artists, network, all that stuff is great. But out of all of it, no matter what we're doing, even on stage performing, I'm still, you know, every once in a while, my bass player will make a little left turn and play a certain note on a song we done 1,000 times. And I mean, I'll literally turn around like, ooh, you know what I mean? Like, let's go, you know? It's about that feeling, man. It's about that same feeling that Bill Withers' music gave to me or Sade's music gave to me. If I, it's crazy that we're in a place now that we can actually offer that to somebody else.
Yeah.
Is really, that's the part. I mean, and keep it really 100. I only thought of that recently. I only really came up for air and was like, I know how important Bill Withers was to me. If in any way I'm like that to somebody else, I can't even like wrap my mind around that. And so I just recently was thinking like, could I possibly be that to somebody? Like, you know, I never even considered that. But that's what that feeling does. You know, when you give off that kind of feeling, it can change lives. It can change people's courses, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
For everybody that's out there, check in. I just want to know where you're coming from. Show some love to, you know, my guy. He's inspiring everybody. Just like,
Yeah.
you know, I just think it's interesting, especially when, you know, you're out and about trying to kind of figure your way out, when you see people and you see kind of what they have going on, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, yeah. Oh, right. You know, it's refreshing in a lot of ways. And I feel like early on as well, you adopted kind of trying to help groom, you know, artists
Oh
that were
yeah.
coming behind you. That's always been a part of who you have been since I've ever heard of you.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about Soul Village,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I would be in Atlanta, people like, all right, yeah, they would be planning out their whole New York little mini trip and everything. It was like, okay, I'm gonna go to the studio on this day, then I'm gonna try to do this interview, then I'm gonna go to Soul Village because I know I got to get on. Maybe Eric will put me on and I can get up there. And I'm like, yo,
Yeah.
man, that's what's up. How did how did that come about? And then the question is, was it to balance that with your own artistry simultaneously?
Well, you know, it's always been a part of balance, in my personal opinion. Balance is the most important part in artistry. But um, you know, going back to Eric Roberson, a songwriter, when I was really trying to make the transition as an artist, I remember when going to concerts in New York, it seemed like when you go to see the Roots or you go to see or like when Jill did her first show in New York, or when Bilal or Dwele, it always at SOBs. So I was like, all right, well, let me try to see if I can book SOBs, and I couldn't book it. I was calling, my manager at the time, Jarrell, was calling, and we couldn't get it. They were like, nah, we're not interested. You know, so eventually one day we were like, well, how much does the place cost? You know, like what date you got open and how much it costs. He said, well, it costs such and such. Like, well, we'll book our own show. So we booked the place, and we had such a successful show that started a relationship with SOBs, which I then probably did shows there for the next 2 years, like every 3 months or something like that. And then one day they were like, "Are there other artists like you?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah." And they were like, "Well, would you be interested in doing like some kind of showcase, not for like sign artists, but like for this?" And of course, you know, I always went to Village Underground. Shout out to Ron Grant, God bless the dead, one of my super duper heroes. And Village Underground was amazing, and it was different. We had an opportunity to kind of do something where we were bringing in more like artist showcase, like you come in with your music, come in with your album, come in with, and it was also more of like from an independent standpoint. I did it probably 13 years. I hosted it every third Wednesday. And mind you, I didn't live in New York, so I was driving. And at one point, I moved further south. I almost moved to Philly, so I was driving 2 hours there, do the show, and then drive 2 hours back. But it's all about giving back, man. Really, I mean, I don't say that I'm focused on the betterment just because it sound good. You know what I mean? Like I really want my actions to really show that my goal is that if I spend time with you, I'm gonna challenge you to make me better, and I'm gonna challenge you to be better. Period. Or we wasting each other's time. You know what I mean? So, and it may not even always have to be the most obvious thing. It's just the slight nudges that can happen. And Soul Village was a blessing for me because it gave me so much time on stage.
Yeah.
So my comfort on stage, outside of having a child, I probably did everything on the SOB stage all those 13 years. I mean, I fell asleep at one point on stage, like for real. Like I remember this, I came in from LA, and I came in from London, jet lagged is crazy. I probably landed the day before and then came up and did Soul Village. And then just as a joke was like, ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for such and such and such. I'm gonna be back behind the drum sleep. And I went back there and laid down and just told them to just tap me when they done. It was like, and it was like, so it was like, everything you could possibly imagine, we tried. We tried. And, you know, I think the freestyles all came fine-tuned there. The knowing things were going to work out, because there was plenty of times where a DJ was supposed to play or a band was supposed to start and the kick drum wasn't working. So now I got to buy 5 minutes. All right, let me figure out, you know, how to keep everybody's attention for 5 minutes. That was so much training.
Yeah.
So sure, we gave back. Sure, we gave a platform for a lot of people, and it helped start a lot of people's careers, as well as introduce them to the tri-state area. But you know, it was a super valuable time for me, and really, you know, gave me a lot of brothers and sisters. Most of my staff, I see Sweet Locks in the thread. A lot of my staff today, Aunt Shia, that were the Soul Village crew. People that came to that show that were fans. That were fans became friends, and friends that became staff. You know, and so I wouldn't trade that time for a world. I think it's just really about committing to it. I stopped really 3 years ago when we had our third son,
Okay.
and it was a lot to try to keep going back and forth, and it was changing. And now it's Brother Christian hosted. He's phenomenal as well. But it was time, you know.
Yeah.
But it was great, and you know, I teach at Berklee College of Music now, and I fly there once a week. It's the same. It's the same thing as like Soul Village. I made a commitment. I get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. I go there when we were traveling, and I would fly there in the morning. I would teach all day, and I would go right back to the airport and fly home. And
Wow.
why? Because, and it's not really. I always say it's not about the money. You know, it's about the chance to like provide what you've learned, and the people that helped me when I was 21 and 19 and 25 and 30 trying to figure things out. It's my job to kind of start passing that on too, you know.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Man. Okay. Everybody tuning in. I'm Kameron Corvet. You obviously know who the guy in blue is. It's all good. He's got his bison blue on. It's all good.
Indeed. Ain't you? What school you went to?
Man, I went to Morehouse, but I went after we stopped playing y'all for homecoming. I never got to go up there and wild out, man.
Well, you still got time, man. You look young enough. You go right down there, you know, you fit right in. But no, you know, crazy homecoming. They got, you know, there's two parts of homecoming. There's the young homecoming, there's the older homecoming, and it's all of it be popping, man. So yeah, come on down to homecoming. As soon as you go to homecoming, you know you become a Howard alum.
Oh,
so,
word? Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, so you know, I had a sweatshirt ready for you when you get there. You know.
So I have really been listening to Hear From Here, bro. And
oh man, appreciate it.
I love the project, man. People don't, you know, I'm very hard to please, especially when it comes to projects, because people just don't care about the continuity of a project and taking somebody on a journey. I really felt like when I heard Hear From Here, I started with I'm like on my conversation type stuff, you know, but then once I got to Already Knew You, that's when it's like the texture really starts. It's like another course of a meal, you know what I'm saying? So and it just keeps going like that. It was like, but every song has its own character. Every
Yeah.
song has its own spirit, which I can appreciate. It didn't seem like, you know, it was just, oh man, how many songs we gonna do? We're gonna do about 10 songs. I need about 5 ballads. I need like 2 mids. I need, you know, it was very thoughtfully put together. And I wanted to know how that came about, because we were in the middle of smack dab in the middle of the earliest part of the pandemic, the most unsure part of that. So where did
Yeah.
the creativity come from, and kind of how did it, you know, get catalyzed, if you will?
I remember Berkeley told me, they said any teachers that commute up don't come this week. And I remember I kind of knew what that meant, because a lot of my students are from other countries. So when we started the school year, they were coming to class going, my country is being destroyed by this virus. So I remember like, wow, that's crazy. And then of course it just got closer and got closer. So when they said don't come, I was like, that's probably means my show's about to be canceled. And I just immediately went, I think that's what I do when I the way I heal, or the way I meditate, or just try to escape, is I escape through music. I turn a mic on, I turn the keyboard on. And what was interesting about it, time, I've had periods where I've uh, dove heavy into production. I'm not a musician in any form, fashion like yourself, but in the room, I can hum out my little keyboard parts. I can hum out my little guitar part, bass line, stuff like that, drums, of course. And there's periods where I go albums and years of not touching any tracks. Right?
Yeah.
It does depends on wherever I'm at. So I just clicked the equipment on, man, and I just heard. It wasn't like I was trying to do an album. I just kept hearing music. I have a whole nother album done. It's called LNS that I did last year. That was supposed to come out like in June. It was supposed to come out, and here I am. I'm recording music, and then I'm sharing it, because why not? I'm sharing it. I have a group called The Process, which I can tell you about in a second. But then I also, like, when I wrote something, I would post it on like Instagram or Facebook, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, that helped me out so much tonight. That little quarantine song or quarantine music." Next day, I would go in the studio again. I would, my kids were doing homeschooling, and then like just when everybody was going to sleep, I would dip down there again, and I would just hear everything. It wasn't like there was much struggle. There wasn't much like, what am I going to say this time? It was just more like I just heard. It was so quiet that it was like, so I really, more than anything, I stopped writing just so I could have it be an album. And I think when it was Wednesday, I was like, all right, I think Wednesday I did a song called Tonight. I saw somebody comment. That was probably the change. It was probably like song number 7 or 8. I did a song called Tonight. I posted it at like 5 o'clock in the morning. I just finished. Just me playing keys and singing. And then when I woke up, it was like 200 comments. Like, what are you doing? What is this? Like, is this a quarantine album? And that's why I was like, it might be. It might be. And for me, it was more of like, yo, at the end of the day, what we do is an act of service, man. We fortunate that we can make a living doing it. But it's at the end of the day, it's an act of service. You could take somebody's mind off of something or bring their minds to something. Let's do it. So I think that Wednesday I decided to make an album. I called up a few cats, probably the people I was talking to that week. Dana Johnson was one of them, Avery Sunshine. Rodney Jones was another one. And I just was like, take this track. Can you flush this out? Take this track. Can you flush it out? Dana Saray, I sent him 2 tracks. Can you flush this out? On Wednesday we made that change. We started mixing uh, Friday or Saturday. We handed the album in on Monday.
Wow.
The album was out that next Friday, April 1st. It was out. So we did the whole thing in like 4 weeks. And it was crazy because even talking to distributors, we deal with distributors all across the world. And I remember just talking with them saying, all right, remove business out of the conversation. If this conversation goes business, we'll talk about the next record. We won't do this one. I need this record out this week. And they were like, well, we need setup time. We need to get on playlists. I was like, no. I said, no, we don't have time for that. I have no idea what tomorrow brings. And I know people might need this. And listen, if it becomes the biggest record I've ever done, great. If it just takes people's minds off of things for 1 week, great. I'll be honest, I was fine either way. And it's done great. It's done great. And I kind of moved away from it a little bit once, the George Floyd, murders and just the protests, I think it was better to service a different kind of service at the time. So I moved away from it. And that's the great thing about being an independent label and artist. You can do whatever the heck you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that record doesn't get old. When it's time to kind of bring it back and work it, we'll work it. But I'm really proud of it. I'm probably as connected to that album as any record I've ever done.
Dope. Dope.
Yeah.
Man, I appreciate you chopping it up with me.
Yeah.
Everybody has been enjoying it. All of these, every conversation I have is different, and it's insightful in its own way. And before I let you go, I wanted you to take the floor and address, you know what I mean, all the people that are tuned in, who love your music, who've been rocking with you since the beginning and everything, bro.
Yeah, listen, I would not be here if it wasn't for you guys. So I thank you. Shout out to my team in general, and shout out to all my process people who I might have seen on here as well. If y'all did not know, I have a group of people on Patreon, about 550 people that subscribe to follow me in the studio. Every song I do, they've A&R'd every album I've done, the last 3 albums. They pick what songs are going to make the album. Right now, technically, my background singer Demo is finished up his album. They're A&R'ing his album now. They're picking what songs make his album. So we're completely part of the process. If you're interested, go to jointheprocess.com. Jointheprocess.com. And just, man, much love. But I want to take this look. I know we got, 4 minutes. What you working on?
Man, come on, brother.
What are you working on?
Man, I'm working, I think for me, I've gone through a journey of a sonic journey, especially toting the guitar around. There are a lot of labels that people want to throw at you when you got a guitar, and it's been kind of about finding the depth that I'm willing to go to as a songwriter and a guitar player. Really allowing the acoustic, which is the first instrument that I picked up, to speak for me for once. It was always the thing I would just bring with me, and anytime I was called, but I never was like, yo, this is, you know what I'm saying? It's one and the same. So I'm working on an acoustic project, man. So it's starting to shape up really, really well, and part of my whole intent is just to build it from, the intimacy outwards. You know what I'm saying?
No doubt.
Usually that's the way the songs come to me. If there's something else that I can add to it afterwards, cool. But I just want to make sure that I love it just as it is with me and the guitar. You know what I'm saying?
No doubt.
So, yeah, that's what's up.
Well, I'm putting my bid in. We've never recorded. So holla at your boy. We all working right now. So,
yes, we are. Yes.
Let's get some work done.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you. Shout out to Sweet Lock. Shout out to Madeline for just supporting both of us and helping make this, a smooth process. Man, I appreciate you, and I
appreciate you as well.
We're gonna get this work in, bro.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Take care.
All right. Appreciate it.